Fans of Disney Animation's most recent film, Frozen, spotted Rapunzel and Flynn Rider at Elsa's coronation. This naturally sparked conspiracies all across the interwebs, but one that particularly caught my eye was the theory originally found on Tumblr. What if Elsa and Anna's parents died on the way to Rapunzel's celebration, and the sunken ship found at the beginning of The Little Mermaid was that of the King and Queen of Arendelles? Tangled was released in 2010, 3 years before Frozen. And the story of Frozen begins 3 years after Elsa and Anna's parents' death. So, if the film's timelines are synced, it would make sense that Rapunzel and Flynn felt the need to attend Elsa's coronation after her parents died on the way to Rapunzel's return celebration. The conspiracy states that Tangled takes place in Germany, Frozen takes place in Norway, and The Little Mermaid takes place somewhere around Denmark. So it's possible that the sunken ship that Ariel was exploring could be the same ship. But was it really? Well, if you want to follow locations the theory states, the King and Queen of Arendelle would have to travel over the North Sea to get from Norway to Germany, passing the coast of Denmark. However, the time and location of these 3 Disney films is never specified. They all fall under the convenient fairy tale vagueness of once upon a time and far, far away. Well, that doesn't help us at all. So let's dig deeper. Rapunzel is a Brothers Grimm story published in 1812 in Germany. The Little Mermaid and the Snow Queen were both published by Dutch writer Hans Christian Andersen in 1837 and 1845 respectively. The Snow Queen specifically takes place in Norway, but Frozen is only loosely based on Christian Andersen's story. Arendelle is a fictional country heavily influenced by Norwegian, Dutch, and Austrian culture. Geographically, we might as well pretend it's somewhere near Genovia. And if we're getting really specific here, the King and Queen ship looks nothing like the one Ariel's scavenging at the beginning of The Little Mermaid. Rapunzel and Flynn were confirmed to be Easter eggs by Disney animators, but unfortunately, our Tangled friends are about as non-canon in the Frozen universe as Scar is in Hercules or as Goofy is in The Little Mermaid. The conspiracy definitely makes sense, but because the ships don't match up and the time and location of these 3 films are vague enough, it just cannot be proven. So on the plausibility meter, I give the Frozen, Tangled, and Little Mermaid theory a 3.5 out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracies. In the comments below, let me know what you think of this theory and if you agree with my debunking. Make ssure you subscribe to channel Frederator and stay tuned for next time. Bye! I told myself I wasn't gonna make this joke, but here I go anyway. So what if Disney's Aladdin took place in a whole new world? Oh god, I hate myself so much. But listen to this. What if Aladdin took place in the very distant future in a post-apocalyptic, semi-Arabic world? The conspiracy states that Aladdin can't take place in the early Middle East. This is because when Genie is released, he says he's been in the lamp for 10,000 years, and then later in the movie he says Aladdin's clothes are so 3rd century. Meaning, Aladdin would have to take place in 10,300 AD. Considering all the pop culture references Genie makes, this could make sense. The part of the theory that I don't really buy is where it states that the flying carpet and all the other magic in the film is just future technology. So let's talk about this. Here's the first fact about this film. It's a Disney movie. And a common theme in Disney movies, just in case you didn't know, is magic. The genie is magic. His phenomenal cosmic power allows him to exist in any time, meaning he's able to know who Groucho Marx and Jack Nicholson are while existing somewhere around the 8th to 16th century. So let this be the only time in the history of ever that a theory will be disproven with the hard facts of magic. Sorry folks, in cartoons, magic will always beat logic. So on the plausibility meter, I'm going to give the Aladdin conspiracy 1.5 talking parrot sidekicks out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracies. Make sure you subscribe to channel Frederator and stick around for next time. After my episode about the Frozen, Tangled, and Little Mermaid conspiracy, so many of you so politely brought to my attention that I was incorrect. And that actually, when the King and Queen of Arendelle's ship crashed, they didn't die somewhere between Norway and Germany, but instead washed up on the coast of Africa and raised Tarzan. I'm going to do this in the nicest and most organized way possible. Here are 3 reasons why this conspiracy is completely ridiculous. Number 1 is the most obvious, that Elsa and Anna's parents look nothing like Tarzan's parents. I mean, unless somehow months at sea turns you ginger,
there's no resemblance. Number 2 is that these films take place 400 years apart. While it isn't specified exactly when Frozen takes place, we can assume it's around the Middle Ages based on the fashion and the technology. For these same reasons, as well as the novel the film is based off of, we know Tarzan takes place in the 19th century. Last but not least, a geography lesson. If we're following the original conspiracy and Elsa and Anna's parents shipwrecked somewhere on the North Sea, they would have to swim a hell of a long way to end up on the jungle coast of Africa. So I hope, once and for all, this settles it. Honestly, the only connection between these two movies is the shipwreck. And if we're going based on that, you know what? What if Jack never died on the Titanic and he swam all the way to Norway to become King of Arendelle? For the record, I'm being facetious. So, on the plausibility meter, if I can even bear to consider this plausible, I give the Frozen Tarzan theory 0 Olympic level swimming parents out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. In the comments below, let me know if you agree with me or not. If you click on the left over here, you can get a sneak peek of next week's episode. Make sure you subscribe to the channel Frederator, and I'll see you next week. Hey guys, I know what we're gonna do today. I'm sure I'm not the only one who is super jealous of Phineas and Ferb's 7-year-long summer vacation. Phineas and Ferb are a pair of stepbrothers that live in Danville, a tri-state area that is constantly in near danger of Dr. Doofenshmirtz's not-so-evil plans. But do you think that Dr. Doofenshmirtz could actually be Candace and Phineas's real dad? Phineas is a pretty astounding inventor for only being a kid. Is it possible that he picked up his inventing skills from somewhere else? It's been indicated in the show that Phineas and Candace's mom, Linda, once dated Dr. Doofenshmirtz in the 80s. So, let's take a trip back into the dating lives of cartoon characters. At some point, Doofenshmirtz and his now ex-wife Charlene had their daughter, Vanessa. According to this conspiracy though, Doof cheated on Charlene with Linda after Vanessa was born. Then, about 2 years later, Linda had Candace. Somewhere in there, Charlene and Doofenshmirtz got divorced, and he then married Linda, and then they had Phineas. Then, I guess Linda divorced Doofenshmirtz, although I can't really blame her. He had full custody of Vanessa and therefore forgot all about Phineas and Candace. We can assume he left the kids pretty early because neither of them grew up with a real father figure until Linda remarried. Also, Candace and Doofenshmirtz have seen each other several times, but never seem to recognize one another. And it is true, the Flynn children do have some physical similarities to Dr. Doofenshmirtz, like their long necks and blue eyes. Phineas and Doof are also two of the only characters in the show that have triangular-shaped heads, and they both have a knack for inventing. Well, could there be baby daddy drama in Danville? I hate myself for saying that. I mean, I love a little baby daddy drama as much as the next girl, but let's not get too excited. In the episode What Do It Do, Doof tells Perry that after their first date, he never sees Linda ever again, which cancels out the whole marriage, 2 children together thing since they only saw each other once. As for Doofenshmirtz and Phineas's physical similarities, co-creator of the show and character designer Jeff Marsh said he wanted both characters to be edgy, hence triangles. Marsh said that Phineas is edgy in a nice way, and Doofenshmirtz is edgy in a sad, pathetic way. Do you need more proof? On a panel, creators of the show Jeff Marsh and Dan Pavamir denied this entire theory. And with that being said, I have to give the Phineas and Ferb conspiracy 0 secret agent platypi out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. If you'd like to see any of the research we did for this conspiracy, links are always down below for you to check out. If you click over here, you can get a preview for next week's video. Make sure you subscribe to channel Frederator. Let me know if there's any conspiracies you want me to cover in the future, and I'll see you next time. Bye. This group of fictional 4th graders essentially raised the bar of what it was like to be a kid at recess. The show centered around 6 kids and their elementary school antics. But what if the recess game was actually ghosts forever living on the playground of 3rd Street School? Similar to the Ed, Edd and Eddy theory, basically all of the kids of recess are dead, and their ghosts are forever trapped in 3rd Street Elementary School. So here's the actual theory, and get ready, because it's a long one. 3rd Street School was built after World War I, and TJ Detweiler was among the first to attend. When the Great Depression hit, TJ was leading the students in a revolt against the school's budget cut when he was hit by an ice cream truck and died. Mikey came to the school in 1929. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and fell into a diabetic coma and then somehow died of a heart attack at age 10. Spinelli arrived in 1933 and somehow was able to talk to the ghosts of TJ and Mikey. She ended up dying in a fight on the playground. Randall came to the school in 1944. He told on a kid who was beating up a second grader, and when that kid got detention, he came to Randall's house in the middle of the night and killed him. Great! Gus transferred to 3rd Street in 1951 and could communicate with the ghosts of TJ, Mikey, and Spinelli as well. He was bullied a lot and also died in a fight. The Tylers and the Ashleys arrived in 1958. They were rival gang groups, and one night when both groups were holding slumber parties, they were all coincidentally murdered by a serial killer. Gretchen came in 1962 and was the smartest girl in her class. In 1965, Becky Benson stole her science project, and in a fit of anger, Gretchen killed herself. Sam and Dave came in 1968 and apparently died in a coal mining accident outside of school. Vince arrived in 1978. In 1982, he tripped and broke his leg, making it unable for him to play sports ever again. He attempted suicide but ended up dying in an asylum instead. And finally, King Bob arrived in 1991. After being elected 4th grade president, he went mad with power and murdered the entire student body. He was sent to juvenile hall and then was eventually murdered by another inmate in 2001. 3rd Street School was eventually shut down in 2002, but the ghosts of the kids still haunt the playground as if recess never ended. Okay, what the f***? Not only is this theory horribly depressing, it also makes no sense. First of all, if you were the ghost of a child, why would you choose to spend the entirety of your afterlife in school? It makes sense for TJ, Spinelli, and Gus to be forever trapped in 3rd Street School, but the other kids either died at home or in some kind of facility. And if we're to believe the animated series is actually about ghosts of school children, why are there teachers and other school faculty? The theory says they're forever stuck in recess, but why are they in class so much? And what about their parents? In numerous episodes, the kids go home and are with their families. They also go on a number of field trips. If the playground is supposed to be purgatory, it's pretty lenient for letting the kids leave whenever they want. A couple of other minor things. The Tylers and the Ashleys aren't rival gangs. The Tylers are the Ashleys' little brothers. King Bob is also a 6th grader, not a 4th grader. And if the kids are all from supposedly different time periods, why do they all have pretty modern, casual clothing? Also, the pilot of Recess is Gus's first day at 3rd Street School. And if we're to follow this theory, wouldn't he have been the last to die? And if we can assume the theory takes place the same time the show aired, which was 1997 to 2001, and King Bob didn't die until 2001, how could he have interacted with the other kids at school if he wasn't a ghost yet and still at juvie? Even more things wrong with this theory. In the TV movie Recess Taking 5th Grade, the kids promote to the 5th grade and Bob graduates to middle school. Why would ghosts further their education? And what about Recess All Grow Down, where the kids are all kindergartners? Someone explain that! Ugh, this conspiracy makes almost no sense. It feels as if whoever wrote this conspiracy has never seen an actual episode of the show. The playground purgatory idea is interesting, but not well thought out at all. So, on the plausibility meter, I give the Recess conspiracy half of a dodgeball out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. If you agree or disagree with my debunking of the Recess conspiracy, let me know in the comments below. As always, if you have a recommendation of any conspiracy you'd like me to cover, also let me know in the comments below. If you click over here, you can get a preview for next week's episode. Make sure you subscribe to channel Frederator, and I'll see you guys next week.
Disney's female leads might sometimes seem pretty visually similar, but what if there's more to that than just a design choice?
So is this just another instance of Disney's unoriginal character designs? Or could it be something more? Do you think Jane could be Belle's great-great-granddaughter? I can understand where this theory came from because it's pretty hard to ignore the physical similarities between Jane and Belle. They both have brown hair that they tend to pull back, and they both seem to wear yellow dresses. They also both have eccentric fathers, a desire for adventure, a taste in slightly wild men, and then a determination for fixing those men. In Tarzan, we also get a cameo appearance from the dishware formerly known as Chip and Mrs. Potts. It's possible that all of this runs in the family. But what connects the daughter of a French inventor to the daughter of a British professor? Bet you didn't guess it's the Duke of Weaseltown from Frozen.
It's pronounced Wesselton. You know, he does look very similar to Jane's father, Professor Q Porter, but how exactly are they related? Beauty and the Beast seems to be set between the mid to late 1700s based off the original story, and Frozen is set in the mid 1800s. We're assuming the Duke is German based on his pronunciation of certain words, but how is a German Duke related to the grandson of a French prince? Well, for answers, let's look at everyone's favorite topic, the French Revolution. Belle and the Beast could have fled to Germany, where they would have been financially well off enough to win favor with the German nobility. This history would actually explain why the Duke is scared of sorcery, because his grandfather was cursed. The legend of his grandfather's curse would have been passed down through his family, which also means there would have been a wonderful moment when the Duke would have sat down with his father and said, "Son, let me tell you the story about the time your grandfather was a bear pig man." So when the Duke lost trade with Arundel, he would have seen opportunity in the British Industrial Revolution. And as a resourceful businessman, he did well enough that his grandson became a professor, also weirdly subconsciously interested in the study of giant hairy monsters. For a family that had gone from rags to riches across all of Europe multiple times, you can understand why their descendants would be adventurous, adaptable, and able to understand people who don't really speak their language.
This theory sounds so cool, but unfortunately it seems to fall apart pretty quickly. It makes sense that Frozen takes place around the mid-1800s. If you look at Hans's uniform, they're based off of Napoleonic and early post-Napoleonic era, which is around 1830 to 1850. So then when does Beauty and the Beast take place? Disney was heavily influenced by the original French fairy tale, which was published between 1740 and 1760. So we can assume that the film takes place somewhere in the mid-1700s. But this is where the theory makes its downfall.
During the song Be Our Guest, the dishware, apparently thinking being living dishware isn't oppressive enough, form a construct of the Eiffel Tower. But the Eiffel Tower wasn't built until the late 1880s. So if it's set in the late 1880s, how would Belle's grandson be able to go back in time to visit Elsa and Anna in Arundel? This is excellent fan fiction, it's just too bad history got in the way. Once again, history, the worst. So on the plausibility meter, I have to give the Frozen plus Beauty and the Beast plus Tarzan world theory a 3 out of 5 anthropomorphic dishwares out of 5. So that is an exhausting history lesson hidden in a wonderful conspiracy theory. While we rest up and look up for more theories, watch some cool cartoons here on channel Frederator. We have Saturday morning cartoons or Tuesday. Try either of them, they're both pretty great. And if there's any other theories we've missed or haven't talked about, let us know in the comments below, as well as seeing the research we found for this episode. And there's also a preview of next episode around here, or maybe here.
Today on Cartoon Conspiracy, we're going to do something a little different. We're here on location in the happiest place on earth with fellow Disney connoisseur Sarah Snitch.
And today we're here to get to the bottom of some of the craziest facts and fiction about Disneyland.
Disneyland's address is 1313 Harbor Way. Sounds creepy, right? Well, M is actually the 13th letter in the alphabet, so MM actually stands for Mickey Mouse. Main Street, USA was designed to resemble the center of a turn-of-the-century American town, based on Walt's hometown, Marceline, Missouri. Here on Main Street, you can buy anything from decorative caramel apples to Disneyland merchandise. But at one point, you could also buy lingerie and cigars. Where the Crystal Art Shop stands today was once home to the Wizard of Bras, and this Native American statue is the last remnant of the tobacco shop that was open until 1991.
Did you know that Walt built himself an apartment inside the park so that he could stay and enjoy it with his family? It's right above the fire station, and while it's no longer in use, a light is kept on to honor him. Sleeping Beauty Castle actually has a working drawbridge, but it's only been used twice. Once at the park's opening in 1955, and again at the reopening of Fantasyland in 1983. Until the Tower of Terror was built in 2004, the Matterhorn was the tallest peak in the city of Anaheim. But did you know that in this to-scale model of the famous Alp, there is an actual basketball court? Due to the building codes in Anaheim, in order for a structure to be that tall, it had to be labeled an athletic complex.
Have you ever wondered how cast members and face characters get around the park without being seen? The rumor is that there is a series of underground tunnels and rooms. And while this is not the case for Disneyland, it's actually true in Disney World.
So we can all agree that Disneyland is probably the most magical place on the planet. And part of that magical illusion comes from Disney's own colors of green paint. Go away green and no see 'em green. They paint things these colors when they want them to blend into the background.
One of the best kept secrets in Disneyland is Walt's very own secret lounge called Club 33. Walt created Club 33 as a VIP lounge for Disneyland's investors. Up until 2012, only a select number of people were allowed in the club, but when the list opened up again, new members could pay an initiation fee of $27 grand and get put on a waiting list of 14 years. but it might be worth it because Club 33 is the only place inside of Disneyland that serves alcohol.
Around the holidays, the Haunted Mansion is taken over by characters from Nightmare Before Christmas, but the rest of the year it's haunted by silly spooks. Except, they might literally be haunted. Rumor has it that in the 70s, a family spread the ashes of their deceased son on the ride. I mean, if I had to spend the rest of eternity haunting somewhere, I'd like it to be Disneyland.
Disneyland is home to a lot of animals: goats, horses, ducks, and even cats. Instead of hiring an exterminator to handle any rodent problems, Disneyland instead employs hundreds of feral cats to wander the parks after closing and do a little pest control.
As if they couldn't stick Mickey Mouse in enough places throughout the park, Imagineers have hidden hundreds of hidden Mickeys across the resort. Some are pretty obvious, while others are very sneaky.
Probably one of the biggest Disneyland conspiracies out there is the location of Walt Disney's supposedly cryogenically frozen head, foot, nose, body, whatever. Some say it's under the castle, others think it's buried under the hub, and some even think it's in the Matterhorn. What do we think?
Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave your favorite Disneyland fact or conspiracy theory in the comments below.
Make sure you guys also check out Sarah's channel. She makes super awesome videos. Thanks for subscribing to channel Frederator, and stay tuned next week for another episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. I would like to give just a big pat on the back to the Disney fandom for creating a conspiracy for a movie that has just barely been released. This conspiracy was actually sent to me by a viewer named DJ, and it was way too crazy to pass up. So, how are Disney's Big Hero 6, Frozen, Tangled, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Bolt all connected?
You may have noticed a wanted poster of Hans in the police station of San Francisco. That's where this conspiracy theory begins. It's been pretty obvious that since Disney switched over to CG animation that all of their female characters look exactly the same. And it's apparently a well-documented fact that all Disney female characters must reproduce asexually via mitosis. And supposedly it is absolutely canon that Rapunzel is a cousin of Anna and Elsa from Frozen. And from there, the conspiracy states that Big Hero 6's Honey Lemon is the asexually reproduced daughter of Rapunzel, Gogo Tamago is the daughter of Elsa, and Aunt Cass is the daughter of Anna because they all look so alike.
We can also assume that Frozen and The Little Mermaid take place in the same universe because the sunken ship at the beginning of The Little Mermaid is that of Anna and Elsa's parents. Also that The Little Mermaid and Aladdin take place in the same universe because of Sebastian's quick cameo. And here's where the actual conspiracy begins. After Hans is arrested in Arendelle, he's sent to prison in Agrabah where he finds the genie's lamp. He uses it to transport himself to the year 2032 and kidnaps the daughters of the three cousins. Hans then tries to ransom off the girls to Rapunzel's great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter Penny, who we can also assume exists in this universe because a photo of her dog Bolt can also be seen on the police officer's desk. When his ransom doesn't work, Hans goes into hiding as the kabuki mask villain Yokai and kills Tadashi, the great-great-great-grandson of Kristoff. So is this Disneyverse theory really true?
Where exactly is it well documented that all Disney princesses asexually reproduce? I mean, we all know how mermaids reproduce, and it's super gross, but Ariel was a human when she had Melody, and Melody would also have some of her father Eric's genetics. And that still doesn't explain Rapunzel, Anna, or Elsa.
I'll contradict myself a little bit and believe that Anna and Elsa really are the cousins of Rapunzel, and that Frozen and The Little Mermaid really do take place in the same universe. And alright, I'll even buy that Aladdin and The Little Mermaid take place in the same universe. And so maybe Hans's brothers banished him to a prison all the way in the fictional Middle East hundreds of years after the events of Aladdin, which is like, harsh.
I'll buy this conspiracy up until the point that Hans travels to the future to ransom off the daughters of the princesses, because I have a little bit of a problem with that part. How are we to know that Tadashi is related to Kristoff? I mean, I know they look a lot alike, but are we supposed to assume that all men also asexually reproduce? How does the world exist then?
Actually, let's go back to the asexual reproduction thing, because that's what's really bothering me about this theory. I'm definitely not a biology expert here, but last time I checked, I'm pretty sure these girls aren't fungi or giant bacteria, so I don't think they can actually reproduce asexually. Of course I don't think this conspiracy is canon at all. Like the Frozen Tangled theory, the Frozen Tarzan theory, and even the Frozen Beauty and the Beast theory, This one relies solely on Easter eggs and really creative fan fiction. I'm definitely not gonna give it a 5, but I also don't want to give it a 0. So I'm gonna give this conspiracy a gold "you tried" star. Thank you guys so much for checking out this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. If you click around here, you can get a preview for next week's episode and check out last week's episode as well. And you guys should totally even check out the other cartoons we have on this channel. We have one featured right around here. And if you click somewhere around here, you can even join the channel Frederator network, but make sure you subscribed and I'll see you guys next week.
So I was up late at night watching cartoons, eating a jar of peanut butter, which is a pretty typical Saturday night for me, and I had a terrifying thought. What if Tailspin, the cartoon about bears flying planes, is actually a terrifying sequel to The Jungle Book about animals taking over the world? Our first piece of evidence is the song from The Jungle Book called "I Wanna Be Like You." If you haven't heard it in a while, you're like, oh yeah, it's about a bear dancing with monkeys in a grass skirt, it's super cute. No, in fact, it is about a monkey king declaring his intentions to become like mankind and take their power for a higher empire. Also, it's in the ruins of like an ancient civilization, which is also just creepy as hell. In the song, King Louis states that he wishes to walk like a human,
I wanna walk like you,
talk like a human,
talk like you.
and he also expresses a disappointment that he feels like he's stuck at the current ring of the animal food chain. He wants to have mankind's fire and their power to ascend to a new, higher level.
And be just like the other men. I'm tired of walking around.
So what if after the events of Jungle Book, King Louis actually succeeded and got some of mankind's power and then took over all of humanity? And then instead of just getting fire, they got planes and buildings and tacky Hawaiian shirts. After this mass genocide of the human race, they decided to build a town in a place called Crepe Suzette, which is a fun wordplay of a French word for a dessert called a crepe Suzette, which is wordplay that no kid will get or appreciate. There, Baloo opened up a plane delivery service called Hire for Hire, run by a female bear named Rebecca, who I think is supposed to be attractive, but it's hard to tell because she's a bear, and found a sidekick in the sky surfing bear named Kit, which I think is also physically impossible. Meanwhile, King Louis opens up a bar because why not, and Shere Khan, well, Shere Khan is a tough businessman running Khan Enterprises. Is it Shere Khan or Shere? I never. Shere Khan, okay. Yeah. The only one missing is Bagheera, which is a little weird because he's such a main character in the Jungle Book, but maybe he actually existed and just passed away in the Great War. Oh yeah, the Great War, that's a thing, that's canon. In the episode Bygones, Baloo references a thing called the Great War, which ended 20 years ago. While we don't know exactly what the Great War is, it definitely could be an animal uprising. In Tailspin, Baloo's name is actually Baloo von Beerwald the 13th, which translates to mean he is the 13th in a long line of bears from the Brown Forest. Or jungle, it's the same thing basically. Before I start poking holes in my own wonderful theory, let me tell you some fun facts about Tailspin. Did you know that 2 episodes of Tailspin are banned? Well, one permanently banned and one only temporarily banned. The first episode was called Lost Horizons and was supposedly stereotyping Asian culture. Tisk tisk. The second episode was called Flying Dupes and was temporarily banned for having references to terrorism. Fun animals committing acts of terrorism. Also, did you know that Tailspin was nominated for an Emmy in 1991? Or that Tailspin is spelled T-A-L-E, even though it should totally be T-A-I-L because it's about animals with tails, and T-A-I-L is the appropriate term for planes. It's very confusing. There are a few holes in my theory thanks to the behind-the-scenes history of the show. In an interview on animationresource.org, one of the show's creators, Jim Magon, admitted that the show was basically a last-minute idea. Magon was already working on a show about Baloo and other secondary Disney characters that got rejected. Desperate for an idea, he recalled a plot from an earlier episode of Ducktales he wrote that would give Lunchpad McQuack his own air delivery service. He just swapped out the ducks for bears, and there you go, Tailspin. Same thing. So Tailspin was definitely a last-minute idea, meaning that any characters and their placement in the show, it's really just kind of them filling in the blanks. Like, you got King Louis, sure, he can run the bar. Tigers are businessmen, sure, there you go. So since this is my own personal theory, it seems very unfair for me to rate it. Why don't you in the comments tell me how good this theory is? And it's pretty good, right? It's pretty solid. Bears are scary. Well guys, thanks for letting me yell at you about Tailspin for a while. If you want to check out other awesome cool conspiracies, there's a link to last week's episode right here, and there's also preview information on the next episode right around here as well. Also, you can check out other cool things like Saturday morning cartoons and Tunes Day, and information on how to join the Frederator network. Thanks for watching.
Ah yes, there's nothing better to do in the wintertime than curl up in a blanket, drink some hot cocoa, and watch a movie about a psychopathic queen who wants to kill her entire family. Is it possible that Disney's Frozen and Stanley Kubrick's The Shining could be the same movie? Now this theory proposes that Frozen and The Shining are the same movie because they have the exact same plot. This is pretty insane, but let's just look at the similarities. Elsa and Jack both have something powerful inside of them that's a danger to everyone else. When given a position of power, like Jack taking care of a remote mountain resort and Elsa taking over the country of Arendelle, they both lose control. But hey, where's Anna in all of this? Well, Anna is Elsa's Danny. They're both innocent and a little naive as to what's happening around them. And what about Olaf, our favorite snowman? Olaf is Wendy Torrance. They're both goofy sidekicks who are willing to sacrifice themselves for the Danny Anna character. So then who's Kristoff? Well, he's Dick Halloran, who Danny calls when he needs help. Just like how Anna calls Kristoff when she needs his help getting through the snow. With all of this, that leaves us with one person, Hans. Yes, Hans is actually the infamous Grady from the Overlook Hotel. While Hans didn't exactly kill his entire family, he did abandon them at a chance for getting more power. Another striking resemblance between both movies is that Danny and Anna were both physically harmed by Jack and Elsa. Elsa accidentally shot Anna with an ice blast, which caused her to hide her powers. And Jack accidentally dislocated Danny's shoulder, which caused him to give up drinking. So, are Frozen and The Shining the same movie? This is so crazy and insane, it's hard to even really consider it a conspiracy. The idea that Frozen and The Shining are the same movie is really just a comparison between some slight similarities in both films. Of course, it's hilarious to compare crazy Jack Nicholson to a Disney princess. But do I really think they're the same movie? Yeah, no way. Plus, if Elsa really was Jack, wouldn't she have become the ice statue at the end of the movie instead of Anna? Based on all of this evidence, I'm gonna have to give the Frozen and The Shining conspiracy, or the Frozening conspiracy, 2 axes out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. If you agree or disagree with my debunking, let me know in the comments. And if you have any suggestions for a conspiracy you'd like me to cover, let me know. Make sure you check out a preview for next week's episode and catch up on any episodes you might have missed. Also be sure to subscribe to channel Frederator, and I'll see you guys next week. The 90s were a time for ripped jeans, skateboards, and everything being totally tubular. Throw some ducks into the mix and you've got the makings of the Disney afternoon lineup. For all of you 90s kids out there, these names will probably ring a bell. Quack Pack, Ducktales, and the terror that flaps in the night, Darkwing Duck. And if you were not fortunate enough to watch these shows, here's a brief explanation. These 3 shows follow the adventures of secondary characters from the cast of the original Mickey Mouse cartoons. Each show centers around a cast of quirky, or should I say, quacky, characters all embarking on unique adventures, like being a superhero in disguise, or a grumpy billionaire. But there could be something else these shows have in common besides their friendly, feathered main characters. Is it possible that DuckTales, Quack Pack, and Darkwing Duck all took place in the same universe? The whole theory starts with DuckTales. DuckTales follows the adventures of billionaire Scrooge McDuck and his 3 grandsons Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and sometimes Webby, Scrooge's housemaid's niece. Through their crazy adventures, they encounter several villains that try to steal Scrooge's fortune, but of course, Scrooge and the boys always prevail. According to the conspiracy, after the events of DuckTales, Scrooge dies of old age. Since Scrooge was gone, the boys had to go live with their Uncle Donald. And that's how we get Quack Pack, which is a series with an almost identical structure. But instead of Huey, Dewey, and Louie gallivanting around with Scrooge and his billions, they join Donald Duck, a camera operator, to his news reporting girlfriend on their travels around the world. And as if Quack Pack takes place years after the events of DuckTales, and on the same timeline, Huey, Dewey, and Louie are all teenagers now. So if DuckTales and Quack Pack are supposed to be basically the same show, what happened to Webby? She was a major character in DuckTales and went on most, if not all, of the adventures with the boys. So wouldn't she also be in Quack Pack if that were the case? Take a moment to remember that Webby wasn't related to Scrooge by blood. Her guardian was the maid, Bettina, so after Scrooge died, she most likely went to go live with her. So now, what about Darkwing Duck? a show about the adventures of a mask-wearing, web-footed superhero whose alter ego is suburban father, Drake Mallard. Well, if you can recall, Launchpad McQuack was Scrooge's trusted pilot in Ducktales. So if the events of this conspiracy are true, after Scrooge's death, Launchpad would have to find a new job. So Launchpad offered to be Darkwing Duck's sidekick and pilot to his plane, the Thunderquack. And how could we forget the reoccurring characters that cross over from show to show? This really does add some ground to this theory. In the Darkwing Duck episode, In Like Blank, we get a cameo appearance from the Beagle Boys, Flintheart Glomgold, and Magica the Spell, all of Scrooge's arch enemies from Ducktales. And in Ducktales, we see Ludwig von Drake, Donald Duck's uncle, who we learn is actually a close friend of Launchpad McQuack. Von Drake then becomes Donald's resident inventor in Quack Pack. From all of this, clear connections can be drawn between characters that tie all three of these shows together. And is it really a coincidence that two of the cities in both of these shows are named from duck puns? Duckburg and St. Canard feel like they could really exist in the same universe. Now, does this foul theory hold up, or can we quack the case? Well, this theory is so incredibly plausible, it quacks me up. But there are some things that might keep it from being true. When Darkwing Duck was originally developed, it was intended to be a spin-off series of Ducktales. The idea of Darkwing Duck was inspired by two episodes of Ducktales, Double O Duck and The Masked Mallard. In Double O Duck, Launchpad becomes a secret agent, and in The Masked Mallard, Scrooge becomes a masked vigilante superhero, wearing a purple uniform and cape. Apparently, there were plans to have Launchpad and Scrooge McDuck be a crime-fighting duo, but due to having no heart, the show idea was scrapped. And from there, writer Tad Stones went on to develop Darkwing Duck, which means that maybe residually, all the crossovers and cameos are just coincidence. Another thing to note is that in Quack Pack, the characters are shown interacting with humans, while Ducktales and Darkwing Duck exclusively feature anthropomorphized animals. We could propose that somewhere along the line, ducks took over the human world. But wouldn't we have still seen humans in Ducktales before we see them in Quack Pack? This theory is well thought out, and who knows, maybe in this universe, humans are only found in certain geographical areas. Well, this conspiracy isn't quite all it's quacked up to be, but it still builds a solid nest. Honestly, I'm still pretty convinced of this theory, despite the few gray areas we brought up. And I do have a soft spot for Disney afternoons. So on the plausibility meter, I'm going to give the Quackvasion conspiracy 3 duck blurs out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. In the comments, let me know what you thought of this episode. If you guys have any suggestions for conspiracies you'd like us to cover, send us an email or even a video and we might feature it. Make sure you check out that preview for next week's episode and catch up on any episodes you might have missed. Join the Channel Frederator Network, subscribe to Channel Frederator, and I'll see you guys next week. It's no secret that I am a cartoon fanatic, but I am also a Walt Disney aficionado. Seriously, I've read every book ever published about him, I've seen every documentary, I even go to Disneyland at least once a week. I don't want to brag or anything, but I probably know everything there is to know about Walter Elias Disney. So it's not unknown that this American legend has a pretty long list of crazy conspiracies about him. Like the whereabouts of his maybe frozen body parts and his ties to, like, say, the Illuminati. But this particular conspiracy we're going to cover today actually took me by surprise. Could Walt Disney actually be an FBI informant? Okay, Walt Disney, a secret agent for a government organization? Can you imagine comparing Walt Disney to, say, James Bond or even Burt Macklin? Well, this conspiracy proposes that Walt Disney was collecting information and reporting it back to the FBI. And the information could be about any of the famous and powerful people Disney was on good terms with all over the world. But how could Walt Disney, the pioneer of American animation, a man who preached in believing in your dreams, how could he be secretly spying for the FBI? Well, in 1994, Mark Elliott published a book called Walt Disney, Hollywood's Dark Prince. It explored the darker side of this esteemed creator and made some pretty wild accusations. But one point in particular Elliott made caught a good deal of attention. It is, of course, the theory we are currently exploring. The author declared that from 1940 to his death in 1966, Walt Disney worked alongside the FBI as a secret informer. And believe it or not,
there are actually FBI documents to back this up. Some of these documents can be found on the FBI website under his full name, Walter Elias Disney. There are over 570 pages, but the majority of them have been redacted, which of course Elliot claims to be suspicious. He believes that the Disney family, along with the FBI, could be hiding something from us. Of the pages that are still left, we've learned that Walt volunteered his park, Disneyland, for the FBI to use however they find necessary, and that relationship was mutually beneficial. And there was also a proposal for the FBI to provide their offices to Disney to shoot portions of the Mickey Mouse Club. Now remember, this was post-World War II in the US, so one of the major activities of the FBI was combating communist threats. It's actually well documented that Walt Disney was staunchly against communism and did whatever he could to oppose it. Around this time, the Second Red Scare was in its peak, and Senator Joseph McCarthy had instilled a fear of communists hiding amongst us and encouraged people to turn in those they were suspicious of. This fear created the Hollywood blacklist. Many creative professionals were forced out of Hollywood because of their political beliefs or rumors about their political leanings. It is known that at this time, Walt Disney did actually assist the FBI in its investigations with communist threats in Hollywood. In October 1947, Disney did testify in front of the House Un-American Activities Committee, a committee that investigated alleged instances of communism in the United States, after the Hollywood Reporter released a list of communist sympathizers in the film industry. Celebrities like Walt Disney and Ronald Reagan opened up the hearing by saying that the communist threat in Hollywood was a big one. Disney specifically testified about the employee strike at the animation studio after his resistance to join a union, which at the time was considered to be a red flag. So, was Walt Disney really an FBI informant? With so many of the official FBI documents redacted, it really brings up a lot of questions about this conspiracy. Mark Elliott's book does take a strong negative bias towards Walt Disney and makes some pretty extreme accusations, like that Walt Disney's body was actually cryogenically frozen. Oh, and that Walt was actually born in 1890 to a peasant woman in Spain. In fact, after the book's release, Walt's family made an official statement that denied the claims Elliott made in his book. They acknowledged that Walt was designated as a contact for the FBI, but his late wife Lillian Disney went on to say, "There's no evidence in the records that would even support or tend to suggest that Mr. Disney even knew of this designation." Along with this, former director of the FBI, William H. Webster, went on to say, "Such records do not support the assertion by Elliott that Walt Disney was an informant for the FBI." And according to the documents still available on the FBI website, the FBI denied every single proposal Walt gave them to film the Mickey Mouse Club at the FBI headquarters. As for his strong anti-communism, we have to understand that post-World War II was a very different time in America. People really thought that Russian communists might drop nuclear bombs on us at any second. So the threat of communist spies in America was perceived as very real. Everybody was spying on everybody. Paranoia was very high, and the influence of McCarthyism was so strong that neighbors were spying on neighbors and wives were telling on husbands. Walt Disney was probably just doing his best to do what seemed to be the most patriotic thing at that time. I think it could be possible that he, like so many people in America at that time, was acting almost like an informant just out of patriotism for our country. Walt Disney is still a beloved figure all around the world, but he's definitely not flawless. It's possible that he signed up with the FBI to inform, but never actually did anything. So while he may not have been perfect, Walt Disney has still made an enormous impact on the world with his innovations. Not necessarily his supposed secret spying for the government. It's a little hard to give this conspiracy a rating because it's a little true, but a little not true. But since it's the spirit of the show, I guess I'm gonna have to give the Walt Disney FBI informant conspiracy 2.5 cryogenically frozen Walt Disney heads out of 5. It's halfway, seems fair. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. In the comments, let me know what you thought of this conspiracy and if you agree or disagree with my debunking. If you guys have any conspiracies you'd like us to cover, you can email us right here. If we like it enough, maybe we'll feature it in a video. Make sure you guys join the channel Frederator Network and check out a preview for next week's episode. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.
Craig McCracken has given us some of the best animated shows of our lives, from Powerpuff Girls to Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. The newest of his ventures, Wander Over Yonder, is a hilarious new show on Disney XD. But looking back on Craig's work, there's Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, and there's Wander Over Yonder. Wait a minute. Wander looks very familiar, doesn't he? Wasn't there an orange character with the big green hat in Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends? Creaky Pete, right? And he looks almost exactly like Wander from Wander Over Yonder. So could Creaky Pete actually be Wander? In the Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends episode, Trouble with Scribbles, we are introduced to the wise old Creaky Pete. When we take a moment to look at both characters, Creaky Pete sure does share a lot of similarities with our planet-hopping friend Wander. This conspiracy, originally found on Tumblr, proposes that after many years of traveling the galaxy with his best friend Sylvia, an older Wander decides to finally settle down on Earth under the new identity, Creaky Pete. And Madame Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends is the perfect place for him to hide. Because who would suspect an alien amongst a bunch of imaginary friends? So at this point, you're probably wondering what happened to Sylvia, Wander's loyal steed and best friend. Well, here comes our regularly scheduled "Your childhood is ruined" moment. Sylvia died. Of old age, of course.
I'm so happy we all got out of there in one piece.
So don't get too bummed. We're sure she lived a long, happy, and very snarky life. Now, before all you die-hard Foster's fans storm the comment section with your pitchforks, saying that this conspiracy could never be real, because we've seen Creaky Pete's creator and we know that he's an imaginary friend, not some alien. I'm going to pose this question. Are we really sure about that? In the Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends TV special, Good Will Hunting, Creaky Pete is shown with an old man. This man and Creaky Pete have the exact same beard, and they're even shown rocking in the same rocking chair, which is why many people assume he is Creaky Pete's original creator. It makes sense, and I do understand where this is coming from, but has it really been confirmed? No. The series never really goes in depth into Creaky Pete's backstory, so we're left kind of in the dark. So now let's really compare the two of them. Wander and Creaky are both hairy creatures with the same color scheme, orange and green. Their hats are so similar. They both have circular eyes and are both rounder on the top and taper towards the bottom. Could you really call it a coincidence that Craig McCracken created two characters that look so similar? All this information has really got my brain gears turning. So since this conspiracy is mostly riding on physical similarities, let's start with that. Well, first of all, and most notably, Creaky Pete doesn't have legs, and Wander definitely does. He even wears some cool blue kicks. I mean, maybe at some point his legs just fell off and now they're floating out somewhere in space. Stranger things have definitely happened on both of these shows. But also, Creaky Pete says he's been around longer than he can recall and loves to tell stories. Perhaps some of those stories are about intergalactic adventures that feature a loyal blue horse friend. So at this point, the theory could really go either way. Or not. On August 14th, 2014, Craig McCracken settled this discussion on Twitter. When asked if Creaky Pete and Wander were the same character, McCracken said, "No. Wander and Creaky Pete are two different characters." So based off of Craig's statement, I'm gonna have to give the Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends Wander Over Yonder conspiracy 0 orange beards out of 5. Here's what you guys thought about this conspiracy. Screaming Cereal wrote, "What if that's his grandpa?" Interesting point, but can imaginary friends even have grandparents? JellyJam115 said, "Can imaginary friends even grow up / physically age?" This I actually don't know, and I'd be really interested to hear the actual science behind imaginary friends. The Gaming Snake 1130 said, "I think this. Wander Over Yonder took place before Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Maybe post-apocalyptic." Now that would be really cool, and it actually could make a lot of sense. Cassidy Crystal wrote, "Maybe this could be true, but we have to remember, same artist, there are gonna be some similarities." True, and this is also the same reason people think Danny Phantom and the Fairly OddParents also take place in the same universe. Thank you guys so much for watching this rather disappointing episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. If you guys have a suggestion for a conspiracy you'd like us to cover, send us an email or even make a video and we might feature it. Make sure you guys join the channel Frederator Network and subscribe to channel Frederator, and I'll see you guys next week. As beautiful and magical as the classic Disney princess films are, it isn't exactly news that the female leads were about as flat as the paper they were drawn on. I mean, the formula was simple. Really pretty girl who can also sing. Girl wants to be with really hot guy. Girl gets herself into a mess. Guy has to save her, and they end up living happily ever after. Then tons of merchandise is sold and shoved down our throats. Frozen. That formula changed with the release of Beauty and the Beast. Of course, it featured a single parent, an evil villain, and our traditional ingenue. This one a little more progressive than the princesses that preceded her.
Take me instead.
But what about Prince Charming? Sapphire, what are you talking about? Obviously the Beast is Prince Charming. I mean, it's in the title, Beauty and the Beast. Not so fast, Emily. I wouldn't be so quick to label the Beast as a prince and Gaston as the villain. Maybe there's more to them than meets the eye. Was Gaston's death in Beauty and the Beast symbolic of this new Disney era? So, according to this theory, Gaston actually isn't the villain, but a classic Disney prince. He's handsome, if you're into that look, independently wealthy, everyone loves him for some reason, and he only wants a princess because she's super hot. But aside from being a total D-bag, Gaston actually never really harmed anyone. He was just doing what he believed he was supposed to do. Marry the most beautiful girl in town and start a family. And when he heard that his future wife was being held prisoner by some beast, he rallied the whole town to go save her. But unlike the princesses that preceded her, Belle didn't want or need to be saved. She ended up choosing Beast, which, by the way, I think is hilarious that she calls him that. Like, his name is Adam, don't be rude. Sorry, if you don't mind, pretentious Disney nerd moment. The Beast's real name isn't really Adam. In the actual Disney film, he wasn't given a name at all. The name Prince Adam was actually created for the computer game, and then later used again in the Broadway musical. Anyway, carry on. Okay. Whether or not this was a conscious effort on behalf of the writers, this theory makes a lot of sense. If you look at The Little Mermaid, the princess movie released 2 years earlier, the female lead literally could not speak or stand up for herself, and all her desires revolved around a man she had never met, which is straight up stalker status. And the princesses long before that, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, all needed a man for their happily ever after. Okay, you might have a point there, because the princesses that followed Beauty and the Beast, Jasmine, Mulan, and Pocahontas, all wanted new worlds and new river bends. They all still ended up with men, but this time around, they actually had believable reasons for liking them. Okay, Sapphire, you have me pretty convinced. But let's see if this conspiracy actually makes sense. Could Gaston really be the metaphorical death of Prince Charming? In order to debunk this, let's try and get into the mind of Gaston. I'm a vegetarian. Can I be excused? Fine, I'll take over this part. Imagine, it's the 18th century in a small village in the French countryside. A quaint village, but probably not a wealthy one. They obviously have a royal family, which no one seems to really know or care about their whereabouts for like 10 years. But you are Gaston. You live a relatively simple life. You're a master hunter, an excellent sportsman, and basically the most popular guy in town who can get anything he wants. Things are going pretty great for you, until the girl you like rejects your marriage proposal, leaving you totally embarrassed. And then just a few days later, she's abducted by this strange monster. So everything in your tiny little world is falling apart, and you have to fix it in any way you can. Okay, wait, are you seriously trying to defend Gaston right now? Well, no. Gaston is still a conceited D-bag, and he has no excuse for trying to throw Belle's dad into an asylum in order to get her to marry him. But if your entire life revolves around hunting and wooing chicks, an unknown creature stealing your girl is as bad as it gets. All right, fair enough. I get where you're coming from. Or rather, where Gaston is coming from. But I still think he's a selfish jerk, whose main motive was to kill the creature that Belle chose over him. And he even attempted to kill the Beast again after he spared his life, which are two really not great things in my book. So maybe we can agree to disagree on this point. But now let's talk about how Gaston is different from every other Disney villain that came before and after him. If you look at some of the most iconic Disney villains like Ursula, Maleficent, and the evil queen from Snow White, they all look straight up evil. Gaston was the first villain to be portrayed as handsome. And if we look at the Walt Disney Animation Studios that follow Beauty and the Beast, from Aladdin all the way to Frozen, many of these antagonists have very clear, villainous motives. Usually it's power hungry like Scar, Jafar, Ursula, and Yzma, or craving revenge like Hades, or just plain greedy like Clayton or Governor Radcliffe. But not all of them were clearly villains. What about Hans, who tricked us all?
If only there was someone out there who loved you.
Or Mother Gothel, who was manipulative and raised Rapunzel as her mother. I think that ever since Beauty and the Beast, the Disney villains have become more complex and more realistic. So I agree with you, Sapphire. I think Gaston really was the metaphorical death of the stereotypical Prince Charming and Disney villain. So on the plausibility meter, I give the Gaston theory 4.5 Lumieres out of 5.
Glad you came around, Emily. I give this theory 4.5 floating dying roses.
Here's what you guys thought of this conspiracy. RJ Respico said, "This is a very interesting conspiracy. Maybe at the bottom of the cliff there was water. And maybe Gaston comes back as the Winter Soldier. Eh? Yeah?" Mr. Chad 990 wrote, "It looks like we're going to, puts on glasses, be your guest for this episode. Hell yeah." Francis Wilfred Borda Alaeng wrote, "Well, the Beast's name wasn't revealed, right? So what if the Beast is the real Gaston and the villain Gaston is just his doppelganger?" Whoa, this conspiracy just got a whole lot crazier. Mad scientist Quazop said, "Interesting, maybe the Beast is a symbol for the newer princes, who aren't perfect in every way. And Belle would be the new princesses, who care more about personality and less about physical traits." I think you might be right. Disney is finally lowering the bar on their high prince-princess standards. Maybe it's something we can all finally aspire to, but probably not. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. Thank you to Sapphire for helping me host this episode. In the comments, let us know what you thought of this theory and if you agree or disagree with us. If you guys have any suggestions for conspiracies you'd like us to cover, send us an email, write in the comments, or even make us a video and we might feature it. Make sure you guys join the channel Frederator Network and subscribe to channel Frederator, and I'll see you guys next week. Of all of the Disney Universe fan theories, this one seems to be the most widely regarded as true. It involves two of our most beloved Disney films, one based off of a Danish fairy tale and one loosely based off of Greek mythology. Yet some are convinced that these two redheads must be cousins. So could Ariel and Hercules really be related? Besides their lovely ginger locks, how could these two characters be related? Well, this theory can easily be explained with a little help from Greek mythology. So in the film The Little Mermaid, Ariel's father is King Triton, who in Greek mythology is the son of Poseidon, god of the sea, which would make Poseidon Ariel's grandfather. In mythology, Poseidon is also the brother of Zeus. And Zeus, both in the film and mythologically, is the father of Hercules. This technically makes Herc and Triton first cousins. And since the child of your first cousin is then your first cousin once removed, that makes Hercules and Ariel first cousins once removed. As if the Greek god family tree wasn't confusing enough, could Ariel and Hercules really be related? It's hard to argue with the incestual and adultery-filled facts of Greek mythology, but I think we can tackle this challenge. First off, every player in this conspiracy is referred to in Greek mythology, except Ariel. Probably because Ariel is based off of the main character in Danish writer Hans Christian Andersen's story, The Little Mermaid. But let's roll with it anyway. So according to Greek mythology, Triton is only father to Pallas and foster parent to Athena. There isn't even much about Pallas besides that her and Athena once battled and Athena mortally wounded her. But what about the Disney mythos, which is the thing I just made up? Well, in the Little Mermaid trilogy, Triton is still the son of Poseidon, but his late wife is Queen Athena. In Greek mythology, Athena is the daughter of Zeus and Metis, and as we mentioned before, fostered by Triton. But this would also make Triton and Athena first cousins, since Zeus and Poseidon are brothers. A marriage like this, of course, isn't entirely unheard of in Greek mythology. However, Athena is traditionally depicted as a strong woman, being the goddess of war and all, and definitely never a mermaid like she is in the Disney films. And if we really want to get technical about this, in the original Danish fairy tale, the Little Mermaid's father is only ever referred to as the Sea King. Needless to say, Disney's interpretation of Greek mythology in the Little Mermaid films is very, very loose. As for Hercules, who is actually called Heracles in the Greek mythos, he is a demigod because he is the son of Zeus and Alcmene, a mortal woman. In the Disney film, however, he is the biological son of Zeus and Hera. So despite some slight variances in the Disneyverse and the Greek mythos, this theory could still potentially pan out. But wait, Triton actually appears in the Hercules TV series, except not the Triton we're familiar with. Nope, instead we get this green guy. He is still the son of Poseidon and Hercules' cousin, but how are he and Ariel's abtastic father related? We don't know. So while at first glance this theory seems like a pretty obvious one, the Disney family tree and the ginormous Greek god family tree just don't match up. So on the plausibility meter, I give the Hercules-Ariel conspiracy 1 muse out of 5. Here's what you guys thought of this conspiracy. Sam Gaming wrote, so Percy Jackson is related to Ariel and Hercules? Now that is a crossover I'd like to see. Matthew S. said, this is just like the Elsa, Anna, and Rapunzel are related. Or like how Elsa and Anna are related to Tarzan. Or how Elsa is related to Go Tamago and Anna is related to Honey Lemon. Hero Gamer wrote, a better question to ask is why is Hercules a redhead? His parents are Hera and Zeus, both non-redheads. I know Disney made some major changes to Hercules' backstory. Cough, Hera wasn't actually the mom, cough, cough. Hera cursed him, cough, cough. If I am majorly wrong, correct me. You are actually correct. In Greek mythology, Hera was not Herc's mom. In fact, she hated his guts and constantly antagonized him. Also, yeah, neither of them were redheads. And the rest of you were like really torn about this theory. It was half and half of what it would be, so hopefully you agreed with our debunking. If not, let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this conspiracy and if you agree or disagree with how I debunked it. If you have a suggestion for a conspiracy you'd like us to cover, leave it in the comments, send us an email, or even make a video, and we might feature it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel Frederator, and we'll see you guys next week. Hey guys, just letting you know that we're doing Cartoon Conspiracy a little bit different this week. Make sure you guys stick around towards the end of the video to check out a preview for next week's episode. And without further ado, here is this week's episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. Seeing as we are now the self-proclaimed presidents of the Gaston fan club, Sapphire and I are back to tackle another conspiracy about our favorite Disney macho man.
No one's slick as Gaston, no one's quick as Gaston, no one overcompensates for masculinity to hide their secret homosexuality like Gaston.
Sapphire, what poorly dubbed version of the movie did you watch? I'm pretty sure that's not how the song goes.
Are you sure? I can't possibly be the only one picking up a signal on my gaydar. Is Gaston actually gay? The Beast isn't the only one with a hidden identity. This theory claims that Gaston is stuck in the magical talking closet. Why else would he have an entire musical number dedicated to his hairy chest? Overcompensation.
Well, it is 18th century provincial France. Hashtag love wins wasn't a thing, and being openly gay probably wasn't the most widely accepted. So, Gaston could just be masking his homosexuality with hunting and punching, and his personal band of giggling girls that awe over his every move. Or he's just really into hunting and punching. But what about his obsession with Belle?
Belle? More like beard. Gaston's only reason for pursuing Belle is because she's the most beautiful girl in town, which makes her the best candidate for a beard. Maybe Gaston knew that a smart girl like Belle would never go for him, so he'd never actually have to marry her. Some speculate that he's really in love with his sidekick LeFou, who sings, "You can ask any Tom, Dick, or Stanley, and they'll tell you whose team they prefer to be on." Emily, it's as obvious as a flirtatious snowball to the face.
Another part of this theory speculates that the biggest testament to Gaston's overcompensation is his attack on Beast at the end of the film. When he learns that Belle has actual feelings for the Beast, he reacts in the most macho way possible. Start an angry mob and kill the creature who stole your beard. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant girlfriend. So when he gets stabbed and falls to his death, Gaston dies knowing he was gay. I don't know, I'm still not convinced. Could Gaston really just be hiding his homosexuality? Believe it or not, this is not the first time a Disney film has been accused of this kind of subtext. Many Disney characters have had their sexuality questioned. Most recently, people speculated that Queen Elsa's Let It Go is actually about her coming to terms with her own homosexuality. So what about Gaston?
He doesn't care about any of the women constantly flinging themselves at him, and his pursuit in Belle is more self-centered than about love. The theory claims this is because of his overall disinterest in women, but also consider this. A woman's role in 1700s provincial France was pretty set. Become a housewife and stay at home and take care of all the kids. And that limited gender stereotype is exactly what Gaston proposes to Belle. I mean, maybe Gaston's disinterest in women isn't because he's gay, but because he's a misogynistic product of his time.
Well, Sapphire, I'm actually leaning towards the other idea. Andres Deja, a legendary Disney animator, is openly gay. Deja has stated that his sexuality influences a lot of his characters. This includes Scar, Jafar, and most importantly, Gaston. So while no, this doesn't exactly prove our theory, it definitely explains some of that subtext we're picking up on. So, on the plausibility meter, I give the Gaston is gay conspiracy 3.5 hip hips out of 5.
I give it 2 hurrahs out of 5.
In the comments, let me know what you guys thought of this conspiracy and if you agree with me or Sapphire with how we rated it.
If you enjoy really stupid dog vines, you should follow me at Awkward Sapphire.
Steven Universe follows the adventures of a young Steven who's training to become a powerful warrior like his roommates, the Crystal Gems. Along with Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl, Steven shares his adventures with many other friends like his dad, Connie, Sadie, Lars, and most adorably, Lion. As well as being Steven's pet, Lion sometimes acts as a guardian for him. This, along with his pink fur, leads many to believe that Lion and Steven's late mother, Rose Quartz, must have a connection. But is it possible that Lion could be Rose Quartz? As a kid, Who Framed Roger Rabbit was basically just known as a movie with Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny in it, as well as the best piano duel the world has ever seen between 2 ducks. In reality though, Roger Rabbit is a live-action animated noir about murder, adultery, missing wills, the LA freeway system, and racial segregation. Wait, hold on. What was that last one? Could Who Framed Roger Rabbit really be about racial segregation? Among being one of the only times you'll see your favorite Warner Brothers and Disney cartoon characters on screen together, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is one of the first films to combine live action and animation and make it look real. Now, I'm not discounting those dancing penguin waiters or Jerry Mouse and Gene Kelly's tap dancing. I'm just saying that Space Jam came out 10 years later and it has got nothing on Roger Rabbit. Honestly, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is one of the greatest films of all time. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. Over 25 years later, many critics still agree that this film stands out among the rest. A classic noir story about a bitter and washed-up PI, Eddie Valiant, who has to solve the framing of cartoon character Roger Rabbit for the murder of cartoon producer and owner of Toontown, Marvin Acme. Meanwhile, Judge Doom uses Acme's murder as a ploy in his evil scheme to destroy all of Toontown in order to build a freeway through Los Angeles. To anyone who's not paying attention, this just sounds like a really intricate plot. But let's dig a little deeper. The film takes place in LA in the year 1947. In the real world, this was the height of the Jim Crow laws, which segregated whites and African Americans from being in the same places or even using the same things. There was often a designated black part of town. Judge Doom wants to tear down the red car trolley system, which in the film and in history was usually used by those who couldn't afford to have a car. Doom wants to tear down the red car and destroy Toontown in order to build a freeway for the wealthy humans, which is a little something we like to call gentrification, which ends up driving the property value up and the original occupants out, something that is still a very big issue in LA today. But what else leads us to these racist connections? Well, let's take a look at the way toons are treated in the film. You don't see any cartoons in typically respected positions, like cartoon lawyers or doctors or teachers. Basically, all of the toons are performers. In Roger Rabbit, the Ink and Paint Club is where toons perform, but only humans are allowed to be patrons. Much like how at that time the Cotton Club in Harlem, New York only allowed white audiences but featured some of the greatest African American performers, such as Duke Ellington, Sammy Davis Jr., and Louis Armstrong. So could Who Framed Roger Rabbit really have this racial subtext? From sexual innuendos, cigars, horny babies, busty femme fatales, and even alcoholism, this seems way too racy for a film that has its own Disneyland ride. Not only that, but why did Disney allow their mascot to appear in such a racy film? Producer Steven Spielberg convinced studios like Disney, Warner Brothers, Fleischer Studios, Felix the Cat Productions, and Universal to lend their characters to this film, with some stipulations, of course, that every Warner Brothers character must have equal screen time with every Disney character. But that still doesn't exactly explain why these studios allowed their cartoon characters to be in a film about racism. What many people don't know is that this film is actually based on the 1981 novel, Who Censored Roger Rabbit by Gary K. Wolfe. While some elements of the book are very similar to the film, the novel interacts with the world of comic strip characters instead of cartoons. And it is set in the present day. This racial subtext is a lot more obvious in the novel. It utilizes the concept of human-only and toon-only establishments more, as well as toons who have become more successful by assimilating into human culture. The toons also speak through speech bubbles, like you see in practically every comic strip. However, some toons have found a way to suppress this and talk more human, like Jessica Rabbit. Of course, the film adaptation subdued the novel's somewhat heavy-handed racial undertones. But instead of erasing it entirely, Zemeckis and his crew reinterprets it with the story's time period. And these racial themes are more intertwined into the film's overall narrative. I personally believe this is partially why Who Framed Roger Rabbit is such a standout film. In addition to highlighting the golden age of animation, it also sparked the modern era of American animation, as well as the Disney Renaissance that began just a year later with The Little Mermaid. Roger Rabbit is an incredibly important film that transcends the stereotype that cartoons can only be in kids' movies, and proves that animation is a unique medium of filmmaking and not just a genre. You heard it here first, kids. Animated movies can have wacky cartoon characters and discuss serious racial issues. And seeing as by my standards, this conspiracy is mostly true, on the plausibility meter, I give the Who Framed Roger Rabbit conspiracy 5 penguin waiters out of 5. As always, if you guys have a suggestion for any conspiracy you'd like us to cover, write it in the comments or send us an email. If you'd like to check out any of the research we did while writing this episode, links are down in the description. And make sure you stick around and check out that preview for next week's episode. Thanks for watching.
Hey guys, it's James. Before you catch that preview for next week, some friends of ours created an app called Crumbles. It allows you to create and send video mashups to your friends. Go check it out in the iTunes store and tell them James sent you.
Peter Pan has got to be one of the most popular characters in Western culture. Created by Scottish novelist and playwright J.M. Barrie, and most famously portrayed again in the 1953 animated Disney film, this forever young and flying boy is a friend to fairies and the courageous leader of a group of boys who wound up in Neverland. That's right, the Lost Boys. Peter's gang of loyal counterparts that help him protect Neverland from stinky grown-ups, especially the dreaded pirate Captain Hook and his crew. But did you ever wonder what happened to Peter's accomplices if they dare grow older? Could Peter Pan actually be killing off the Lost Boys? Peter Pan has got to be one of the most popular characters in Western culture. Created by Scottish novelist and playwright J.M. Barrie, and most famously portrayed again in the 1953 animated Disney film, this forever young and flying boy is a friend to fairies and the courageous leader of a group of boys who wound up in Neverland. That's right, the Lost Boys. Peter's gang of loyal counterparts that help him protect Neverland from stinky grown-ups, especially the dreaded pirate Captain Hook and his crew. But did you ever wonder what happened to Peter's accomplices if they dare grow older? Could Peter Pan actually be killing off the Lost Boys? Whoa, wait, what? Peter Pan The eternal 12-year-old who spends his days flying around with the help of pixie dust and a magical fairy best friend? The whole coercing children out of their bedrooms to run away with him is a little creepy. But what makes you think he would murder his best friends and loyal followers? Well, according to this theory, the idea comes from a line in the book Peter and Wendy by J.M. Barrie. The line reads, "The boys on the island vary, of course, in numbers, as they get killed and so on." I mean, I get it. Fighting ruthless pirates is sort of a workplace hazard when you're a lost boy. Not all of them make it back alive, I'm sure. I mean, just ask Rufio. Ooh, that hurt to say. But the quote goes on to say, "And when they, the Lost Boys, seem to be growing up, which is against the rules, Peter thins them out." I don't think he's cutting Lost Boys from the team like cheerleaders from a squad. It's possible that Peter is the only one with this magic immortality. So if one of his Lost Boys starts to age, through no fault of their own, what could happen? How would someone like poor Toodles exist in the world of Peter Pan's Lost Boys? One day he falls out of his baby basket, and suddenly this cool older kid asks him to join forces. I mean, at first it probably sounds pretty awesome. He gets to wear like this super cool skunk outfit all day, and the only rule is to never grow up. Which is lots of fun at first, but when he eventually becomes older than Peter, and is no longer useful to him, what, Peter just like betrays you? Do you end up sleeping with the TikTok crocodile? Let's take a step back and look at the original source for this theory. Barrie is the original creator of Pan's character, whose first ever appearance was in the 1902 book, The Little White Bird. In this story, Barrie explains that all infants begin their lives as part bird, who start to become completely human once they are given to their parents. And they completely lose their bird part once they begin to grow up. Upon hearing this as a 7-day-old baby, Peter flew away from his home, not quite understanding that he wasn't literally a bird and couldn't actually fly. But since he has complete faith in his flying abilities, Peter flies all the way to Kensington Gardens, where the fairies live. When he is told that he is not actually a bird, Peter loses the ability to fly and is trapped in Kensington Gardens, and remains betwixt and between being a human and a magical bird-like creature. When he is granted the ability to fly again, he flies back to his old home, only to find that his mother has a new child and has barred the windows he once escaped from. In the play Peter Pan, Peter tells Wendy a story that echoes the one in Kensington Gardens. He tells her, "I thought like you that mother would always keep the window open. And then I flew back, but the window was barred. For mother had forgotten all about me and there was another boy sleeping in my bed." Could it be that Peter's hatred for grown-ups actually comes from some deeply rooted mommy issues? And that's why good old Nibs, Toodles, and the rest of the Lost Boys might as well walk the plank once they hit the ripe old age of 13. Between Kensington Gardens, the play, the book, and the Disney film, we've got quite a lot to look at. In the play, Mrs. Darling mentions that she has heard of Peter Pan before, but as a fairy-like spirit who accompanied children part of the way to death, so that they would not be frightened. Wait, so it's starting to sound more like Peter helps dead children, not kills them when they get too old. And if it's really true that he actually accompanies the spirits of dead children, could it be instead that all of the Lost Boys are dead? Let's look back at the original quotes from the play and the book by J.M. Barrie. Mrs. Darling essentially refers to Peter as the Angel of Death, and in Kensington Gardens, he is quite literally the Angel of Death. I mean, he buries dead children who get locked in the park or fall out of their prams. And it's mentioned in both Barrie's work and the Disney film that the Lost Boys are children who fell out of their prams, which is why they're all Lost Boys and not girls, because girls are too smart to fall out of their prams. But there are also a lot of connections that can be drawn between a heaven-like place and Neverland. Eternal youth, magic driven by imagination, the ability to fly. It's basically the best place the spirit of a kid could eternally rest. So far, this isn't looking so great for Peter. Or is it? We are overlooking a major part of the play here. Barrie's play, Peter Pan, the Boy Who Never Grew Up, mentions that Lost Boys can grow up and they can get killed. In fact, at the end of the play, the Lost Boys return to England with Wendy, John, and Michael, and they all grow up. dead children can't exactly grow up. J.M. Barrie argues that this Peter Pan is not canon in the Peter Pan verse. So that means that the Bird Boy of Kensington Gardens should have nothing to do with the Peter Pan we know and love. So on the plausibility meter, I give the Peter Pan conspiracy 4 TikTok crocodiles out of 5. Or maybe I should give it 1 TikTok crocodile out of 5. I don't know, what do you guys think? Make sure you download the Channel Frederator app. I've started a poll on there and you guys can decide what you give this conspiracy. With the newest season underway, it's easy to say that Rick and Morty has quickly become one of the best adult animated shows on TV right now. Not only is it totally hilarious and mostly improvised, it's got a surprisingly deep and complex plot. And naturally, with any show involving time travel or dimension hopping, several theories have come up about alternate realities. But this one is probably the biggest. Is the Morty we know and love not Rick's first Morty? Could Rick's original Morty actually be evil Morty? We've covered our fair share of Frozen theories here on Cartoon Conspiracy. From possible cousins to long lost brothers to, yes, even great-great-grandchildren. I think we know everything we need to know about Anna, Kristoff, Hans, and Elsa's family trees. As for the origin of Elsa's ice powers, we just couldn't let it go. Okay, but seriously, where did Elsa's ice powers come from? Just in case you've been living under a rock for the past 2 years and somehow haven't seen Disney's Frozen, here's the deal. Sisters Anna and Elsa have been estranged from each other for most of their life because Elsa has been hiding her magical ice powers from Anna. Upon Elsa's coronation, these powers take over, and she ends up running away from the entire country she was supposed to govern, leaving them to freeze and starve to death in the eternal winter that she created. Sure, Elsa, go ahead and make your magical ice castle with your pretty little ice dress and your pretty little ice braid. Meanwhile, your subjects are literally freezing to death. It's fine though. Just throw in a singing snowman and a hunky male protagonist with a funny animal sidekick. Add some sassy trolls to make up for that, and you've got the highest grossing animated film of all time. But I'm getting carried away. At the beginning of the film, we meet baby Anna and little Elsa, who is just learning about her ice powers. Everything's going great until she accidentally shoots some ice magic right into her sister's head, almost killing her. But did you ever wonder where Elsa got these powers? We don't get any previous explanation, no prologue, and not even a tragic backstory. There's no mutant powers and there's no radioactive spider, although there are dead parents. So let's piece together some explanation based on what we see in the film. Right after Elsa almost murders her little sister, her parents, the King and Queen of Arendelle, come to the rescue. The king immediately grabs an old book, which we can assume is about the trolls. We see an illustration of a troll with what looks like a king and what appears to be ice coming out of him. They also conveniently have a map that leads them directly to where the trolls are. When they arrive, Pabby, the elder troll, asks if Elsa was born with the powers or cursed, to which the king answers, born. Pabby then explains to them that Elsa can learn to control her powers. Based on the king's book, as well as the troll's knowledge, Elsa's ice powers clearly have some legend behind them. But what could it be? Some speculate that Elsa's powers were inherited from her father, or a distant family member on her father's side, for good reason too. Where did he get that book from? Why did he know exactly where to go to find the trolls? And after Pabby tells them that Elsa must learn to control her powers, why is he the one teaching her? The king gave Elsa gloves to wear as an attempt to cover up her powers. But did you notice he's constantly wearing gloves as well? Yeah, okay, that last one might sound like grasping at straws, but it could really explain why he knew that gloves would work on Elsa's powers. Another explanation for Elsa's powers comes from a much earlier draft of the film. Composers Bobby and Kristen Anderson Lopez originally wrote a song intended to be at the beginning of the film called Spring Pageant. But the pageant is all about an ancient troll prophecy, one that would curse their land with eternal winter and grant them a ruler with a frozen heart. and this curse could only be broken with a sword sacrifice. But this idea was from a very different version of this film and was ultimately nixed. So while it's not exactly canon, it does give us some interesting information about the history of Elsa's powers. Going back even further into the story, you may or may not know that Frozen was based off of Hans Christian Andersen's story, The Snow Queen. Frozen endured many revisions, but one of its first versions remained very close to Andersen's tale, meaning Elsa was originally the film's villain, using her ice powers for evil. However, in Andersen's story, the Snow Queen's powers aren't explained either. Another explanation for Elsa's ice powers takes us back even further. Frozen takes place in a fictional Nordic country. Nordic culture is deeply influenced by Norse mythology, which, similar to Greek mythology, tells the legends of gods and deities that represent different elements in our world. Skadi is the closest thing to the goddess of ice and snow. Basically, she's a giant who lives in the mountains and the cold never bothered her anyway. However, nowhere in her stories does it mention anything about her cursing anybody, bestowing her powers on anybody, or ever really being involved with humans at all. So what do we do now? Where do Elsa's powers come from? There are so many possible explanations for Elsa's magical ice powers. The pageant and the prophecy were cut from the script. The Snow Queen doesn't give us anything, so where do we go now? The source, of course. Director and writer of Frozen, Jennifer Lee, was also asked about the origin of Elsa's powers. She said, "It was an exhausting process coming to the simplicity of her powers, but we had this whole explanation. Like when Saturn is in alignment with such and such, on the 1000th year a child will be born." Lee also described the problem with attempting to explain Elsa's powers in the film. She says, "The more you explained, the more questions you had about magic and the rules. Essentially, less is better than more." So maybe we were never supposed to know about the origin of Elsa's powers because that's not really what the movie is about. I guess that works for some people, but not for me. Technically, I would give the Frozen origin of Elsa's powers conspiracy 0 Olafs out of 5 due to the director's denial of the entire conspiracy. But I want to know what you think. Let us know in the comments. And make sure you stick around to the end of the episode to catch a preview for next week's episode. Subscribe to channel Frederator and I'll see you guys next week. Last year, Cartoon Network aired 2 new shows, Clarence and a mini-series called Over the Garden Wall. Both shows are very different from each other in many ways, from their subject matter to their drastically different art style. However, both Clarence and Over the Garden Wall take place in an unknown, pseudo-modern time. But there's an even bigger connection between these 2 shows, and it comes from these 2 different shots. This one from Clarence, and this one from Over the Garden Wall. Whoa, those are way too similar. Could Clarence and Over the Garden Wall take place in the same town? I don't care what you say, Halloween was way cooler in the 90s. The candy was crazier, the costumes were hilarious, and Disney Halloween movies were at their prime. Hocus Pocus, Under Wraps, Don't Look Under the Bed, Halloweentown, and Nightmare Before Christmas. And if you remember, both Nightmare Before Christmas and Halloweentown took place in Halloweentown. Okay, sure, I know Halloweentown isn't a cartoon, but it's Halloween, guys. Just let me have this. So, what is the connection between these Halloween towns? Okay, you stubborn skeptics, before you start writing that angry comment, just take a step back. This is a theory that we here at Channel Frederator totally made up. Hey, guys, what if that Disney Channel movie Halloweentown and Halloweentown Before Nightmare Before Christmas were the same place?
What's wrong with you?
We're really a great team here. But think about it. The 1998 Disney Channel original movie Halloweentown is all about the mythical land, Halloweentown, where all of its citizens are creepy creatures and magical witches, and it's always Halloween. Everything is fine and dandy until the mayor of Halloweentown, Calabar, turns out to be an evil shadow creature whose scheme was to take over the mortal world. What? Were you guys worried about spoilers? Guys, the movie aired on Disney Channel 17 years ago. Get over it. In Nightmare Before Christmas, Halloweentown is a little Tim Burton-y, meaning it's dark and creepy and a little disturbing. All the citizens are still strange creatures, but instead of enjoying the Halloween spirit every day, they spend the entire year preparing Halloween for mortals, only to start over again every single year. So what's the connection here? Well, what if Calabar didn't die at the end of Halloweentown and instead went on to wage a full-on war between their world and the mortal world? The Halloweentowners, townies, were ultimately brutally defeated and were forced to remain in the post-apocalyptic wasteland that once was their adorable and quirky Halloweentown. As punishment for the war, the mortal world forced them to join the other holiday worlds and serve the humans by creating Halloween for us every year. It's a little out there, yes, but let's look at the facts. In both The Nightmare Before Christmas and the Disney Channel original movie, both places are called Halloweentown. Granted, there are some slight aesthetic differences. In Halloweentown, it's always bright and the people are always cheery and appear to be somewhat human-ish. Whereas in Nightmare Before Christmas, everything is dark and seems to be falling apart, and all the citizens appear much more creature-like and menacing. This could easily be the result of a long and destructive war led by a corrupt mayor, or it simply may be an alternate dystopian reality. But then there's the mayor. In Halloweentown, Calabar the mayor reveals himself to be the shadow creature, who can only exist in the dark. So there is a duality that the mayor before Nightmare Before Christmas shares as well with his rotating head, literally showing how two-faced he really is. Even their outfit choices show how close this resemblance is. Cause like, how many people actually wear tiny top hats? So maybe Calabar is the reason it's always nighttime in Nightmare Before Christmas's Halloweentown. Even though this is speculation, let's take a second to review the facts. Both films take place in a constantly festive world called Halloweentown. They both have two-faced mayors that dress incredibly close to one another. And let's not forget, they're both Disney films. It may be a reach, but come on, as far as coincidences go, you can't deny that there are far too many here. So obviously this theory isn't true, so I can't really give it a rating. But in the spirit of Cartoon Conspiracy, I have to give the Halloweentown Conspiracy 3 skeleton taxi drivers out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this special Halloween episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. If you guys have any other awesome Halloween conspiracies, let us know in the comments as well. Subscribe to channel Frederator and have a very happy Halloween. One of the many fun things about Disney movies, besides of course the fact that they're Disney movies, is seeing how they interpret existing stories. A decent percentage of Disney's film catalog is based off of existing novels, fables, and mythology. These movies have been carefully crafted to honor tales as old as time, while providing a uniquely Disney vision to the end result. Sometimes, the most successful films take inspiration from well-loved stories, while placing it in a completely new skin. Like, remember when Disney made Shakespeare's Hamlet? No? Well, what about Romeo and Juliet? I am referring, of course, to the Lion King trilogy. Released in 1994, The Lion King is actually Shakespeare's Hamlet in lion's clothing. A few years later, in 1998, the direct-to-video movie Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, is Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, without the tragic death of the main characters. In fact, they even have Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, a story of two minor characters from Hamlet watching the play unfold from their own point of view, similar to Timon and Pumbaa in The Lion King 1.5. While at first glance these films seem to have their own original story, they all go back to Shakespeare. So what do you think? Is it to be or not to be? Overall, Disney films succeed in these retellings of classic stories by finding a nice balance of family-friendly and honoring the true source material. Even the Greek mythology of Hercules wound up being drastically toned down for a more family-friendly version, while The Little Mermaid skips its notoriously deadly ending. The Lion King starts off as a story about a young cub named Simba, knowing that when he gets older, he will become the king of the Pride Lands. Hamlet also belongs to a royal family and is the Prince of Denmark. While many Disney leads are known for their royalty, Simba and Hamlet share the unfortunate trait of having a jealous uncle that wants their king dad out
of the picture. Now, Simba is pretty excited about eventually becoming the king, and actively sings about how he plans to rule everything the light touches. But his uncle Scar is pretty bitter about the whole affair, seeing as he was due to be next in line prior to Simba's birth. With some careful manipulation, Scar puts Simba and Mufasa in terrible danger, where Mufasa loses his life trying to save Simba from a wildebeest stampede. While Hamlet, unfortunately, never breaks into a musical number, he does wind up having a dead father and an uncle who swoops in to marry the queen, or his mom, immediately becoming king of Denmark as a result. Hamlet's father's ghost pops in to inform him that his brother is responsible for his murder, and would really love his son Hamlet to go in for some well-deserved revenge. We know later on that in The Lion King, Mufasa's ghost does appear, but with a much nicer request to remember who you are. Hamlet is sent away to England by his uncle, with no knowledge of his uncle's plan to have the English king execute him. While Simba runs away from his problems, Scar takes over the Pride Lands and everything becomes pretty miserable. Meanwhile, for Hamlet, Horatio is considered his truest friend. Simba is taken by Rafiki to meet with his ghost dad, who puts him down the right moral path, allowing Simba to have the confidence to take over his uncle. Hamlet ends up in a big fencing duel. Eventually, Scar corners him and reveals the truth that he actually ended up killing Mufasa, bringing new anger and strength to Simba, allowing him to defeat his uncle and send him to his death of being eaten alive by hyenas. In both Hamlet and The Lion King, the main characters complete their goals and their character arcs, but with considerably different endings. On the other end of Shakespeare's popular plays, we see Romeo and Juliet, the tragic tale of star-crossed lovers from feuding families. In The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, we catch up with Simba's family now that he is the father of a young cub named Kiara. Kiara winds up befriending Kovu, a cub selected by Scar to be his successor. Kovu, however, is part of a group of lions that Simba banned from the Pride Lands because they swore allegiance to Scar. Simba forbids his daughter from ever meeting with Kovu again. Years later, Kovu is sent on a mission to kill Simba. In the process, though, the two fall in love, but Scar's followers take that as an opportunity to attack the king. Simba is almost killed, but survives, and gets super angry at Kovu for lying to him. But in the end, Kovu and Kiara manage to convince their clashing prides to put their differences aside for the better of the community. The similarities between this film and Romeo and Juliet don't stretch far beyond the original concept, you know, of feuding sides and star-crossed lovers. And finally, there's The Lion King 1.5, the story of what was going on with Timon and Pumbaa during the events of The Lion King. Humorously, this pairs nicely with the 1960s Tom Stoppard play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, where two minor characters in Hamlet, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, wind up watching the story from an outside perspective. While Timon and Pumbaa's plot doesn't really match up with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's, it's nevertheless an amusing comparison. So how does this all really hold up? There's no doubt that these Lion King films pay tribute to some of Shakespeare's greatest work, but the influence is still fairly limited compared to the other Disney film adaptations. While many of the elements are the same in Hamlet and The Lion King, much of the overall plot comes from the core difference that Simba prides itself with not personally seeking revenge from the get-go. Simba's character arc is all about not running from the past, but learning from it. Most of Hamlet's story involves everybody acting childish and effectively killing each other off thanks to misunderstandings and a large helping of insanity. Simba's story is genuinely happier. He gets the girl, almost everyone lives, and he saves the kingdom. Part of his success can be attributed to a solid set of role models, with Mufasa, Zazu, Nala, and Rafiki offering responsible guidance, while Timon and Pumbaa taught him to enjoy life. Perhaps if the people in Hamlet's life were less vengeful or insane, he could have ended up with a happier ending. Similarly, with The Lion King 2 and Romeo and Juliet, the main cast learns to set aside their differences for the sake of two young lovebirds. Luckily, Simba was able to come to his senses before Kiara or Kovu ended up dramatically dying. In a way, Disney films are sort of rewriting where a better lesson is learned, and the end result is shown to be happiness instead of tragedy. While this may not exactly reflect reality in everyday life, it is a wonderful sentiment to suggest that we can make the world a better place before tragedy strikes, and people end up poisoning the wine. Now that's the real Hakuna Matata. In the comments, let me know what you guys thought of this conspiracy, and if you agree or disagree with how I analyzed it. I mean, this theory was like my two favorite things, Shakespeare and Disney movies. All great things. Make sure you subscribe to channel Frederator, and I'll see you all next week. There are many reasons to love Steven Universe. The amazing music, the cool cameos, and the effortless diversity easily make it a crowd favorite in the cartoon world. This universe-protecting team of magical beings live in a world rich of mythology and mystical origins. And we're constantly learning more about where these characters came from and what's in store for them for the future. Still, some characters remain more mysterious than others. Take Jasper, for example. She's a homeworld gem and one of the show's main antagonists. Jasper is known for being ruthless and arrogant, as well as an aggressive fighter. She always looked down on the crystal gems and insulted them relentlessly. For now, she's being held captive at the bottom of the ocean with the unstable fusion Malachite, after convincing Lapis Lazuli to fuse with her in order to defeat the crystal gems. And that didn't work out so well. But somehow, we don't think it'll be long before she gets out and seeks revenge on our beloved crystal gems. But what if it's more than blind hatred? What if Jasper hates fusion so much because she is one? Hey everybody! Before you watch this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy, I have a little bit of an announcement to make. These next 4 episodes of Cartoon Conspiracy will be my very last. I've had an amazing 2 years on this show, but I'm leaving to pursue some of my animation dreams. With over 40 million views and almost 100 episodes of Cartoon Conspiracy, it's definitely hard to say goodbye. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the show these past 2 years. And make sure you stick around to the end of this video for another very special announcement. Most girls grow up listening to the princess narrative. You know the drill. Those stories about young women being rescued by dashing princes and then living happily ever after. It's a tale as old as time. And there's no bigger pusher of the princess narrative than Disney. From the debut of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937, Disney has practically been churning out those charming princes on a conveyor belt. And little girls all over the world grew up arguing which prince was the dreamiest of the dreamy. Flynn Rider. But is it all a big lie? Are all of those princes actually total jerks? And we've actually been rooting for our beloved heroines to end up with a guy we wouldn't wish upon our worst enemies? Why would Disney do such a thing? Write every prince to be the absolute worst. And I do mean every prince. It makes you wonder if it was intentional. Like if Disney has some sort of a secret agenda. Wait, is Disney actually grooming young girls for disappointment later in their life? This theory has been floating around the internet for quite some time. Smosh, The Gloss, BuzzFeed are just some of the websites who have highlighted the prince's highly questionable level of character. And some are suggesting that this was an intentional move by Disney to crush young girls' hopes of ever finding a helpful and supportive significant other in the future. So, to begin, let's look at Disney's biggest offenders. Offender number 1, Aladdin. We've already covered Aladdin's purported jerkiness in the Cartoon Conspiracy episode, Is Jafar the Real Hero of Aladdin? But here's a refresher. Aladdin is a slacker and a thief who justifies robbing other poor people. He claims to have no choice but to steal, which means we have to take him at his word on this, but let's face it, Aladdin himself admits to being a con man. So how can we believe anything he says? Plus, Aladdin wants to use the magical genie to trick a beautiful rich girl into marrying him. If I was Jasmine, I would run fast. Offender number 2, Prince Eric. Prince Eric is the kind of guy who likes his women seen and not heard. Know what I mean? One day, he stumbles across a mute, naked girl on the beach. And somehow, he's totally okay with this. His only shot at redemption is that he's deeply stupid. And therefore, might not even have the mental capacity to realize that he's appallingly shallow. But when his stupidity is his only saving grace, you know you're in trouble, Ariel. Offender number 3, Prince Charming. Prince Charming from Cinderella, first of all, doesn't even have a real name.
And he's the type of guy whose dad throws him a party so he can cherry pick a wife. Then, once he finds his future wife at said party, claiming she's the love of his life after like 5 minutes, he completely forgets what she looks like and has to shove a shoe on every girl in the kingdom just to find her again. Think he's gonna remember your anniversary? Not a chance. Okay, so now let's just do a quick recap of the rest of them. The Beast has major anger management problems, and he kidnapped Belle. Prince Naveen is a gold digger who totally put the moves on Tiana's best friend Charlotte, just for her money. If you ignore Li Shang's blatant sexism, he's not so terrible, but he is a little sexually confused. Captain John Smith, he's a colonist for Pete's sake. We rest our case with that point alone. Flynn Rider is just another version of Aladdin, and no one needs that in their life. And remember the prince from Snow White? Well, I've got just one word for you: necrophilia. And here's the outlier. Prince Philip is maybe the only one of these guys who's a keeper. He falls in love with Aurora when he thinks she's poor. And when he finds out she's a princess, he loves her all the same. He stands by this love for her, even when his dad gives him a hard time. And then he fights a huge dragon for her to boot. That's dedication, and pretty swoon-worthy if I do say so myself. But is it enough to ignore the overwhelming evidence? If we proceed with the assumption that this theory is true, and Disney's decision to make all of the princes total jerks is intentional, this changes all the stories we grew up watching. Belle falling in love with the Beast? That's Stockholm Syndrome. It also leads young girls to believe that you can totally change him, which you can't. Snow White's decision to wait for the perfect guy resulted in her ending up with one that likes her more when she doesn't have a pulse. Also, it's never okay to kiss someone without permission. Ariel's misguided belief in love at first sight means she ended up with a guy who only likes her for her looks. And she kind of completely gave up who she is just to be with him, which is a lesson we all should have learned in Greece. Cinderella had to change how she looked just to get the guy of her dreams to notice her. And then he promptly forgot what she actually looked like. And we can't even begin to handle Pocahontas' decision to marry a guy who's invaded her country, stolen her land, and infected everybody she loves with unknown diseases. But you probably didn't see that part in the movies. Oh, and Jasmine and Rapunzel? Convicted felons are rarely a good idea. Trust me. Now that we've presented our case, what do you think? If this theory is the real deal, that would mean that Disney has been encouraging girls to settle with highly questionable men since 1937. And all those stories about waiting for your Prince Charming were setting us up to fail because the only thing these guys have to offer is a lifetime of disappointment. So does this theory actually have legs? Are all of the Disney princes total jerks? Did Disney do it on purpose to groom young girls for a lifetime of disappointment? If you guys know me, you know I am a huge Disney fan. So of course, I don't personally believe this story. Heck, if I could, I would go with Flynn Rider in a second. I just think this is a hilarious way to look at all the Disney princes. Because let's be real here, the Disney princesses are really what the story is about. So let us know in the comments if you agree or disagree with this theory, and let us know what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching that episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. As I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, that these next few episodes will be some of my last. And with that being said, Channel Frederator is looking for a new host. And of course, we wanted to ask you guys to help out. If you guys are interested in hosting, make a YouTube video, post it, and email it to us, and tell us why you would make an excellent host for Cartoon Conspiracy. We are looking for people in the New York City and LA area. And this is a paid opportunity. Also, it's a ton of fun. So if you guys are interested, definitely send us your videos. And be sure to watch the next couple weeks for special episodes. I'm here today to ask the most important question ever asked in the entire existence of all of humanity. A question so deep and so thought-provoking. It puzzled philosophers and oceanographers for thousands of years. The question, who lives in a pineapple under the sea? Luckily, Nickelodeon has never shied away from answering this age-old question. The answer is SpongeBob SquarePants. Our old pal SpongeBob swam his way into millions of hearts way back in 1999. He's gone on so many adventures with his pals Patrick, Mr. Krabs, Sandy, Squidward, and Gary the Snail. These guys have been all over ocean and land together. 2 movies and tons of seasons later, there's still one question that has yet to be answered. And no, it surprisingly has nothing to do with how they lit a campfire underwater, or why SpongeBob looks like a kitchen sponge instead of a sea sponge. Or even why Squidward can't seem to improve at playing the clarinet. No, there is a much bigger conspiracy to solve in Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob's nemesis Plankton has been trying to figure it out unsuccessfully for years. The real mystery is, what is really in that Krabby Patty secret formula?